Hey folks, Dale Davidson here, Davidson Law Offices. Glad you're here today. I've had a lot of comments, a lot of good feedback. Thank you so much for that on our spousal benefits and who is a spouse, that I thought that we might have a little refresher course here today. As always, if you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that when we get these videos out, that you'll be notified and can be up to date. And as always, if you have any questions, again, leave us some comments below or send me an email at dearvaguy@gmail.com, dearvaguy@gmail.com. So, spousal benefits. Everybody's concerned about their spouse. The veterans are saying, hey, I'm okay. I'm getting whatever benefits I'm getting. But if something happens to me, how do I know that my spouse is going to be taken care of? Okay? Well, that's what we're here today to try and answer. So, to qualify for benefits after the veteran has passed, or what we call surviving spouse benefits, veteran surviving spouse benefits, you got to be able to show that you were the valid or deemed valid spouse of a veteran at the time of the veteran's death. Makes sense, right? Because if you're not the spouse at the veteran's death, then you're not a spouse entitled to surviving spouse benefits. So you got to satisfy one or more of the three of these requirements that we're going to go over this morning. You got to have been married at least a year or deemed valid marriage to the veteran. You got to have continuous cohabitation with the veteran during the marriage or the deemed valid marriage. And no, as a general rule, there's no remarriage after the veteran's death. But there are exceptions to that rule, and we're going to talk about those exceptions. Again, the basic rule to be considered for veteran surviving benefits is making sure that you're the veteran surviving spouse on the veteran's death. Okay? So, you must still be married to the veteran at the time of the veteran's death. That's the general rule. We got some exceptions coming up, okay? That makes sense, okay? Because if you're not married to the veteran on the veteran's death, then you're not the spouse, okay? So as a general rule, divorce cuts off veteran surviving spouse benefits, okay? That's as a general rule. But here comes the curveball. We got baseball coming up, okay? So what happens, or what if the veteran spouse remarries after the veteran's death? That happens a lot. The general rule, again, there's general rules and then there's exceptions. I love exceptions, okay? Because that's where we help our clients the most, in the exceptions. So the general rule is that a surviving spouse must have been the spouse of the veteran at the time of the veteran's death. Remarriage by your surviving spouse generally cuts off entitlement to VA benefits. So let me repeat that. As a general rule, remarriage of a surviving spouse after the veteran's death generally cuts off surviving spouse benefits. But there are exceptions to that rule. Always know that we have the rules, we have the exceptions to the rules. Again, this is where we can help you in the exception. The first one says that if the surviving spouse gets married after the veteran's death, but then the marriage is deemed void or annulled. It says, of course, if it's void or annulled, then that remarriage never existed. Okay? So, we're good to go, right? If it's void or annulled, then veterans surviving spouse benefits would apply. Okay, now, exception number 2 to the general rule that remarriage of your surviving spouse generally cuts off benefits. Now this one gets a little bit more complicated, and I have no earthly idea why the VA has this rule. So it says that if the remarriage or relationship was terminated prior to 1990. Look, this is a 32-year-old law that may be relevant in certain very limited cases. So, for example, this 32-year-old law may apply if the veteran surviving spouse filed for a claim for survivor benefits before 1990. But the claim was never ruled upon, never adjudicated, and so it's still pending. I find it really hard to believe that there is a 32-year-old claim still pending. If there is, you've got some serious issues there. I'm not sure why that would even be still pending after all that time. But in that case, the old law may be relevant because you could say, look, I'm going to challenge the VA with a motion that says, look, my claim was filed before 1990 when the law changed, okay? And so therefore, and y'all have never ruled on it. So I'm entitled to get remarried. I can be remarried, but it's not going to cut off my benefits. So again, that's a far-fetched one. If anybody's had any experience with that 32-year-old law, hey, shoot me an email at dearvaguy@gmail.com, dearvaguy@gmail.com, or leave me a comment below because I would love to hear about it. That just don't understand how a claim like that is going to be still pending. So, but under the new law, the surviving spouse may be eligible for surviving spouse's benefits only if the remarriage ended. Remember that first one says if it's void or annulled. So the new law provides that the surviving spouse may be eligible for disability indemnity compensation. Remember, we've talked about DIC before. So you may be entitled to DIC, may be entitled to have DIC reinstated if the marriage ended in divorce, annulment, dissolution, or death of the second spouse. Or if you never legally remarried, you were just cohabitating, that's like a common law marriage. We don't have that here in Georgia. I don't know of any state in the southern states that recognize common law marriage after a certain period. But again, it's a very, very narrow exception. But because of the effective date provisions of this law, no surviving spouse qualifies under the statute can obtain retroactive DIC earlier than 1998. So if you had filed for benefits and this exception applied, you can't get retroactive benefits, benefits back from prior to October 1 of 1998. Other benefits the veteran's surviving spouse might be entitled to is CHAMP, Dependents Educational Assistance, VA home loans, interest rates going up. But if the remarriage is terminated by death, divorce, or annulment, then the surviving spouse would be entitled to those benefits. The same rule applies to situations where the surviving spouse stops living with another person. Your surviving spouse is holding himself or herself out openly as the other person's spouse. All right. The third and last exception to the rule. Again, we're getting nitpicky again here, so I apologize. But if you have any questions about these exceptions, leave me a comment below or shoot me an email at dearvaguy@gmail.com. So the surviving spouse is at least 57 years of age when they remarried. Now, remarriage was on or after December 16th of 2003. And the claim for benefits was pending or filed on or after January 1, 2004. Now, You see how narrow this exception is, okay? So this category covers surviving spouses who remarry on or after turning 57 and whose claim for survivor benefits is outstanding, okay? The remarriage doesn't have to end for these spouses to be eligible, okay? They can remain remarried and still are entitled to these certain benefits based upon their earlier marriage to the deceased veteran. These surviving spouses are eligible for the DIC, Disability Indemnity Compensation, Home Loan, CHAMP VA, Aid and Attendance, and Dependents Educational Assistance. Again, we've got some really narrow exceptions here. I know it's complicated, but the general rule is remarriage cuts off benefits. But if you are a spouse, surviving spouse of a deceased veteran, and you're worried as to whether or not your remarriage or impending remarriage, or you're thinking about getting married, or whatever it may be, if you're thinking about that, please get in touch with us and let's see if we can walk you through some of these exceptions. Again, dearvaguy@gmail.com, dearvaguy@gmail.com, or you can leave us comments below. So we love our veterans. We love the surviving spouses of our veterans. Surviving spouses, you sacrifice just as much keeping the home front safe and secure, while our veterans were out there keeping our homeland safe and secure. So thank you for those groups of individuals. If you like what we've done here, if you have any ideas for a video, shoot us a comment. Say, hey, I need you to talk about this or talk about that, whatever it may be. We'll see what we can do as far as getting it on the channel here. Again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And until next time, you be blessed.
No more whiskey, I'll have a Coke. Catching bass on an old fishing boat. One more story from Grandpa Joe.